Are you 99?
86.
Yes.
I am.
Okay, Chief, go ahead.
Dr. Waldo Smith.
What?
Dr. Waldo Smith of our PLK lab.
For decades, there's been a legend kicked around by classic TV fans. A story whispered about a moment in the beloved spy spoof, Get Smart, that just went too far. A single scene, a political joke so sharp and so dark that it became the final nail in the coffin for a show already on thin ice. It's the kind of story that's easy to believe. A daring show, nervous network executives, and one joke that crossed the line. The legend says this one moment is what took Get Smart off the air for good. But what if the legend is wrong? What if the story of a single show-killing scene is a complete myth? Tonight, we're launching an investigation. We're going to hunt for this infamous scene, follow the clues from the show's brilliant beginnings to its troubled end, and uncover what really happened. The truth is far more complex and, frankly, a lot more interesting than the legend. This isn't the story of one bad joke. This is the story of how one of the smartest comedies in TV history slowly lost its way, and why a simple myth was just an easier way to explain it all. To understand the fall of Get Smart, you first have to appreciate just how high it climbed. In the mid-1960s, the world was obsessed with spies. James Bond was the epitome of cool, a suave hero who took out villains with effortless charm. On television, shows like The Man from UNCLE brought that same thrilling espionage to the small screen. The spy was a serious figure, a hero for the Cold War. And then, two of the most brilliant minds in comedy decided to turn the entire genre completely upside down. Their names were Mel Brooks and Buck Henry. Brooks, the comedic genius who would later give us masterpieces like The Producers and Blazing Saddles, had a simple, revolutionary idea. He later said, "I was sick of looking at all those nice, sensible situation comedies. I wanted to do a crazy, unreal, comic strip kind of thing about something besides a family. No one had ever done a show about an idiot before. I decided to be the first." That idiot was Maxwell Smart, Agent 86, an operative for the secret government, agency control. He was everything James Bond wasn't, clumsy, clueless, and spectacularly inept. Yet, through a mix of sheer dumb luck and the help of his far more competent partner, the unflappable Agent 99, he always managed to save the day. Their enemy was Chaos, the International Organization of Evil, a perfect, comically sinister foil to their own chaotic operations. The show was a masterpiece of satire. It wasn't just making fun of spies. It was a weekly takedown of the entire genre's cliches. You had the iconic gadgets that rarely worked right, like the infamous shoe phone. And who could forget the cone of silence, a device meant to ensure secret conversations that just hilariously stopped anyone from hearing anything at all? The humor was this perfect blend of highbrow wit and lowbrow slapstick. 1 minute you'd get clever wordplay and subtle political jabs, and the next, Max would be walking into a wall. This combination, crafted by Brooks and Henry, was lightning in a bottle. The show premiered on NBC on September 18, 1965, and was an instant sensation. It landed in the Nielsen Top 15 in its first season, a huge achievement. The catchphrases became part of the culture. Kids on playgrounds and adults at parties were all asking, "Would you believe?" or sighing, "Missed it by that much." Don Adams, who played Maxwell Smart with a perfect deadpan delivery, became a superstar, winning 3 Emmys for his performance. The show itself won the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series twice. Get Smart wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural touchstone. It was clever, original, and for a while, it seemed unstoppable. But behind the scenes, the foundation that made the show so brilliant was already starting to crumble. A golden age can't last forever. The early magic of Get Smart was powered by the unique vision of Mel Brooks and Buck Henry, but their direct involvement with the show was surprisingly brief. Mel Brooks, who was always more interested in film, had very little to do with the series after the first season, using the money to help fund his movie The Producers. Buck Henry stuck around as a story editor a bit longer, but he eventually left to pursue his own legendary film career. Their departure left a creative hole. While executive producer Leonard Stern kept the quality up, the show's comedic soul started to change. The sharp satirical edge that Brooks and Henry had perfected was slowly replaced by broader, more conventional sitcom humor. The comedy shifted from clever satire to more predictable slapstick. The smart parody of spy tropes gave way to sillier, more formulaic plots. This creative drift happened right as another problem emerged: ratings fatigue. After 2 great seasons in the Nielsen Top 25, Get Smart fell out of the top 30 in its 3rd and 4th seasons. In network TV, declining ratings are like blood in the water. The pressure from NBC executives started to build. They wanted to inject new life into the show, to find a gimmick that would grab the public's attention again. Their solution was a classic and often fatal sitcom move. They changed the main character's relationship. For 3 seasons, the dynamic between Maxwell Smart and Agent 99 was a masterclass in unresolved tension. She was brilliant, he was a buffoon, and yet she was completely in love with him, a fact he was blissfully unaware of. Her affection and his cluelessness was a huge part of the show's comedy and its heart. But in the 4th season, under network pressure, the writers were told to have them get married. The season opened with their engagement, and the wedding aired during the critical November sweeps period. While the wedding episode gave them a temporary ratings bump, it fundamentally altered the show's DNA. That delightful will-they-won't-they tension was gone, replaced by domestic life. Producer Leonard Stern was never a fan of the change. Later, blaming the network for trusting market research over creative instinct. The problem was that married life, even for super spies, is just inherently less mysterious than the thrilling dance of courtship. The once subtle romance was now front and center, and the show struggled to find the humor in this new reality. As one critic noted, adding family life was a messy affair. The clever spy parody was now part domestic sitcom, and for many viewers, the original charm was starting to fade. The network wasn't done meddling. When the marriage failed to fix the ratings slide for good, NBC canceled the show after its 4th season. But in a surprising twist, rival network CBS immediately picked it up. This move, however, came with even more pressure to freshen up the show. The solution? Another classic sitcom trope that's often a sign of desperation. In the 5th season, Agent 99 got pregnant and gave birth to twins. For many fans, this was the point of no return. The introduction of babies diluted the show's original concept even further. Maxwell Smart, the bumbling secret agent, was now a family man. The focus shifted from espionage and satire to storylines about home life. The writing team had changed, the humor was different, and the core premise was almost unrecognizable. The ratings continued to drop, and CBS canceled the show after just 1 season, marking its final end in May 1970. The decline wasn't sudden. It was a slow, gradual erosion of everything that made the show great. It's a complicated, slightly depressing story of creative fatigue and network meddling. So where does a scandalous, show-killing scene fit into all of this? And that brings us to the legend itself. The story of a slow decline is complicated. It's so much easier and a lot more dramatic to believe that a single explosive moment killed the show. A myth formed that a dark political joke was the real reason Get Smart got the axe. This is where we have to separate fact from folklore. First, let's talk about the other stories you might hear from fans. The tales of scenes cut for being too silly. There are whispers of a scene where Max wears bunny slippers on a mission, or another where he uses a rubber chicken as a weapon. These anecdotes are part of the show's mythology, often used as proof of the network's timidness. But honestly, there's little to no hard evidence from production records or interviews to back these specific stories up. While networks definitely gave notes, and cut gags, these tales feel more like fan lore than documented history. They do, however, set the stage for a much bigger, more significant controversy. The real legend, the one this is all about, is a joke with a dark political edge. Satire, by its very nature, pushes boundaries. It mocks society's flaws, and in the politically charged late 1960s, there was a lot to satirize. At its best, Get Smart was a clever commentary on the Cold War, a parody of how absurd international espionage could be. The idea that the show might have crossed a line with a political joke doesn't just sound plausible. It feels right. The late 60s were a time of massive social and political upheaval in America. The Vietnam War, civil rights protests, and a growing counterculture created a tense atmosphere. For the most part, television tried to stay neutral. Network executives were terrified of alienating viewers and, more importantly, the sponsors paying the bills. A politically charged joke, especially one aimed at a major public figure, would be seen as a huge risk. The theory goes that Get Smart aired a joke that was just too hot to handle. Some versions of the legend even pinpoint a joke aimed at the governor of California at the time, Ronald Reagan. The claim is that this joke caused a firestorm, giving the nervous network the final excuse it needed to pull the plug. But this is where the investigation hits a brick wall. Despite exhaustive searches of episode guides, old reviews, and historical archives, there is absolutely no documented evidence that such a scene or a specific, outrage-inducing political joke ever aired. There are no newspaper clippings about viewer complaints, no saved network memos, no interviews with the cast or crew talking about the fallout. The smoking gun simply isn't there. What the record does show is a general shift in tone. As the writers struggled for fresh ideas in the later seasons, the humor did occasionally veer into darker or more politically sensitive territory. But this was a trend, not a single event. There was no one joke that caused a scandal. The show's cancellation was a slow burn, not a sudden explosion. The reasons were far more boring and much less dramatic than the legend suggests: falling ratings, creative exhaustion, and a series of story changes that pushed its audience away. So why does the myth stick around? Because it's a better story. It gives a simple, satisfying answer for a complicated process. It paints the creators of Get Smart as daring artists martyred by corporate censorship, instead of a creative team just trying to keep a 5-year-old show feeling fresh. The legend of the controversial scene turns a story of gradual decline into a dramatic tale of defiance. The myth is just more exciting than the reality, and so the myth endures. The story of Get Smart's demise has one last strange chapter. After 4 seasons, NBC canceled the show in the spring of 1969. That really should have been the end. But in a move that was pretty unusual for the time, a rival network, CBS, immediately swooped in and picked it up for a 5th season. On paper, it was a lifeline. For the cast and crew, it was a paycheck. For fans, it meant more Max and 99. But the show that landed on CBS in the fall of 1969 was a different beast entirely. The move to a new network brought both subtle and obvious changes. The budget felt tighter. The opening theme music was tweaked, with a brass section added to make it sound more up-tempo and modern. The visual style of the show shifted too, with many fans noting it relied more on sight gags than the clever dialogue that made the early years so special. The cast also got a shakeup. Agent 13, the spy hilariously stationed in tiny places like mailboxes and lockers, was gone. He was replaced by the return of Agent 44, now played by a different actor. But the biggest change was the promotion of Larrabee, the chief's sycophantic and incredibly dim-witted assistant. In the NBC years, Max was the main source of incompetence. He was the lovable idiot who always won. In the CBS season, Larrabee was often written as being even dumber than Max. This subtly broke the show because now Max had someone to look smart. next to, which undercut the whole successful idiot premise. And then there were the twins. As the network demanded, Agent 99's pregnancy and the birth of their children became a central plot point. This shoved the show even further into domestic comedy territory. Episodes were now about finding babysitters or dealing with the chaos of two infants. The chief was often dragged out of the office to help Max on missions, not because of a grand KOS plot, but because 99 was busy with the kids. The thrilling world of international espionage was being sidelined by the mundane reality of parenthood. The result was a season that most fans and critics agree is the show's weakest. There were still funny moments, but the original spark was gone. That delicate balance of satire, slapstick, and spy thriller parody was just gone. The show was trying to be a spy spoof, a workplace comedy, and a family sitcom all at once, and it didn't do any of them as well as it had in its prime. The ratings reflected this identity crisis. The novelty of the network switch and the new babies wore off quickly. Viewership continued to slide. For CBS, the show just wasn't worth the investment. After 26 episodes, the network said no to a sixth season. Get Smart officially ended its run on May 15, 1970, not with a bang, but with a quiet fade to black. There was no big controversy, no political firestorm. The show just ran out of gas, a victim of time, changing tastes, and a string of creative choices that took it too far from its brilliant roots. So, what's the final verdict in the case of the controversial scene that took Get Smart off the air? After looking at the evidence, the conclusion is clear. The scene is a ghost. It doesn't exist. The legend of a single, show-killing political joke is a myth, a piece of TV folklore cooked up to explain a much more complicated and less dramatic truth. Get Smart wasn't canceled because of one controversial moment. It was canceled because of 1,000 tiny cuts. It ended because its brilliant creators moved on, leaving it in the hands of talented people who just couldn't replicate the original magic. It ended because network executives, chasing ratings, forced changes to the show's core formula, first the marriage, then the twins, believing gimmicks could replace genius. The show's humor went from sharp satire to broad slapstick, and its premise was watered down until it was a shadow of its former self. The cancellation was just the predictable end of a 5-season arc of creative decline and falling ratings that happens to so many great shows. The myth of the controversial scene survives because it's a more romantic ending. It suggests Get Smart went down swinging, that it was too bold for its time. The reality is that it simply grew old and tired, but the way it ended doesn't diminish its towering legacy. For 138 episodes, Get Smart redefined TV comedy. It proved a sitcom could be incredibly silly and incredibly smart at the same time. It pioneered a style of genre parody that would influence countless shows and movies for decades, from Police Squad to The Naked Gun to Austin Powers. Its catchphrases are still quoted today, and its characters, Maxwell Smart, Agent 99, and the Chief, are pop culture icons. The show thrived for years in syndication, finding new generations of fans. It spawned reunion movies and even a big-budget film in 2008 starring Steve Carell, proving its enduring appeal. Ultimately, the story of Get Smart's cancellation isn't a cautionary tale about political humor. It's a lesson in creative chemistry and the danger of messing with a winning formula. It reminds us that lightning in a bottle is incredibly rare, and once it's gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. The show may not have been taken off the air by one controversial scene, but its place in television history is anything but controversial. It was, and still is, one of the greatest comedies of all time. So, what do you think? Were you a fan of the later seasons? Or do you think the show lost its way after the first couple of years? Let me know your favorite Get Smart gadget or catchphrase in the comments below. I'd love to hear your memories of the show. And if you enjoy deep dives into classic television history, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Thanks for joining me on this mission to uncover the truth behind the end of Get Smart. It's a story that proves that in Hollywood, sometimes the most dramatic tales are the ones we tell ourselves to make sense of a complicated reality. The truth may be less explosive than the legend, but it gives us a deeper appreciation for just how special and how fragile a truly great TV show can be. Until next time, thanks for watching.